Okay, so I'm Kim Solez. I'm professor of pathology in the Faculty of Medicine, and I teach a course on technology and the future of medicine that has strong AI component.
I'm Ishita Moghe. I'm a renal pathology fellow working with Dr. Solez. Okay, so over the past few years, and inevitably in the upcoming few years, medicine and AI are becoming increasingly interconnected. So you may have heard of IBM Watson for oncology, which resulted in kind of a catastrophic media failure. But basically the system was designed to give physicians improved treatment options for cancer patients based on patient history and disease outcomes from Memorial Sloan Kettering, which is the biggest oncology institute in the world. But unfortunately, it was fed synthetic patient data, which ultimately led it to make harmful suggestions for cancer patients.
So our world and yours really came together last year, that is pathology and artificial intelligence, with the FDA approval of digital pathology for primary diagnosis. Now, pathology is the study of disease. So there is naked eye changes of disease. We call that gross pathology. And then there's microscopic pathology. And what this FDA approval gave us is the opportunity to use digital images of slides, whole slide imaging, to make primary diagnoses for patients. And you would recognize that digital imaging is the starting point for applying artificial intelligence to pathology. So that's really where it all began. And in 2018, the year after the FDA approval, there was the first ever Digital Pathology and Artificial Intelligence Congress. Now I know this says fourth. It was the fourth digital pathology conference, but the first one that had AI as a component at the end of June. And I've had an interest in this area for a really long time, and I realized there was some tangible proof of that at this meeting, because the keynote speaker was a woman that I recruited to the U of A 27 years ago. So in 1991, the same year as the Banff classification began, I recruited Yukako Yagi here for a digital pathology faculty position. And she moved up in the world to the University of Pittsburgh and finally to Memorial Sloan Kettering. And she is one of the people best known in the area of digital pathology. Then there was the journal, The Pathologist.
So The Pathologist, it's a relatively new and pretty appealing pathology journal. It's the graphics and the readability are really nice compared to older pathology journals, which is creating an influx of interest into the field, which was previously not as appealing. But unfortunately, a lot of the AI and kind of digital pathology based articles within The Pathologist are corporate written or corporate funded, which push the message that AI or digital pathology will only complement and enhance physician abilities like assistants, but never actually step on their toes or, threaten physicians' autonomy.
One of the reasons that there's this strong effort to comfort everybody about digital pathology is that it's a very hard sell. Most pathologists love their microscope and don't want to give it up for anything. But the arguments are very strong for going digital. There's the forest and trees problem. With the old-fashioned microscope, you're looking at one stain at one magnification at a time, and you can miss things. With digital pathology, you can look at multiple mags, multiple stains, all at the same time. You no longer are vulnerable to the slide fading, to its getting broken or lost. can make as many copies as you want. So as you add up all those reasons, you would recognize that obviously the future of pathology is digital pathology. But a lot of pathologists are prepared to resist that with all their might. And so these companies that were so turned on by the pending FDA approval, which has now happened so they can sell products, they want to make digital pathology look like it's totally good, no downside, no possible side effects of this wonderful new influence. So gone from this journal are the blood and guts that's really a part of what pathology is, really. A lot of pictures in standard pathologic practice are not pleasant to look at, but now this journal never shows any pictures like that, only shows beautiful pictures and pleasing graphics and things graphically that are totally engaging, and now there are videos like that. At our pathology meetings, we used to have the worst promotional videos you can imagine, and now we have the best. We're like the Hollywood of medicine. And it's just that we sacrifice the truth a little for becoming the Hollywood of medicine. But every effort is made to be reassuring and comforting.
So a lot of these articles kind of capitalize on the fear that pathologists have of machines or AI kind of taking over what their jobs are. So they say these sweeping statements like AI pathology is never going to replace pathologists. We should not feel threatened by advances in computational pathology. And then vague things like the collective wisdom generated over many years as a community cannot be replaced by a machine, which have no empirical evidence. They're just these broad claims meant to make them feel better.
So many of these statements are only true near term. If you think of any technological progress, there is a period of time during which the machines need human help, but it's not forever, right? So when you say these things, this will be true maybe for 5 years, 10 years, but it won't be true forever. AI will really help you enhance your ability to practice pathology, improve your ability to serve your patients. It's not here to remove pathologists from the decision-making process. And AI is an exciting step forward in the discipline of pathology, one that puts pathologists at the very center of clinical care and precision therapeutics. But pathologists will remain central only as long as they add value. And eventually they won't add value. The machine will be 99% of the value and then 99.99, and eventually the human being won't have much to add. And about being replaced, I think in the near term, what Bertolin Mescu's book, Artificial Intelligence in Healthcare, says is absolutely right. Artificial intelligence will not replace physicians, but physicians using artificial intelligence will replace physicians not using artificial intelligence. So AI will have a big impact on pathologist jobs and the number of jobs there are, but it's not just that machines will replace us immediately. So many of the erroneous statements being disseminated have to do with basic concepts of AI. So we wanted to present here, because what better audience to help us really sort this out than you guys? So we'd like to confirm with you that our feelings about these things are correct and that we're headed in the right direction. Now, there is this very popular and comforting online article by Bertolin Mescu, 5 reasons why artificial intelligence won't replace physicians.
So here you can see the 5 reasons. AI can't be empathetic, it can't do nonlinear thinking, they cannot interpret data, they can't ever do tasks like the Heimlich maneuver, and then finally, human-machine cooperation is the ultimate solution. There is nothing better. So already we can start to poke holes in these arguments. clearly. Things like AI can't do nonlinear thinking, even with
So I think they're talking about leaps of faith, the lateral thinking, non-linear. Yeah, I don't know. Stupid people are linear, right? So I don't know. It's a poorly defined concept. But I think whatever kind of thinking they're going for, I can't think of any reason that machines, as long as you can define it, why couldn't machines begin to go that way?
I think that's one of the biggest issues, that a lot of these things you can't define, but people are consuming it and taking it and making themselves feel better, even though they don't actually have any evidence to suggest that this would work. And things like number 5, human-machine cooperation is the ultimate solution. Going back to what Dr. Solez was saying about adding value, I think this would work as long as humans can add value to the process. But with things like slide analysis, which is a huge part of what pathologists do, when it gets to the point where machines or algorithms can analyze slides better than humans can, which I think is very possible, I don't see why human-machine cooperation would be the ultimate solution.
So, there's this idea of common sense understanding. And I think a lot of these arguments would seem superficially like common sense. But the more that you look into them, every single one of them has no supporting data whatsoever. And so I don't think it would be that hard for the general public to begin to accept that common sense understanding doesn't really work here, that machines will be able to do a lot of surprising things. So I direct a course on technology and the future of medicine, which considers many of these issues. Ishita took the course in the fall of 2017, and Drs. Sutton, Zayan, Pilarski, and Schaefer, and other faculty from your department teach in the course. Bertalan Metzko in Budapest teaches a similar course from a slightly different point of view. He's not an academic, he's a professional keynote speaker. And that's a slightly different mindset from the mindset that I have. But even more interesting is the point of view of the government of Finland. Now, you may not spend much time thinking about the government of Finland, but they're spending time thinking about you. They want Finland to be the best country in terms of AI. They want all their citizens to study AI, or as many as possible. And they have this free course, which is free for everybody. And you don't have to begin at the beginning. You can just pick any part of the course and begin there. So it's very easy to determine what the content of this Government of Finland AI course is. And, yeah, sorry. And one of the peculiar things about it is that it says that you don't have to worry about AI at all, because self-improving AI requires human help at every improvement step. So, the AI wants to improve, but it doesn't dare until it asks the human, and then the human says yes or no, and so on. It's completely ridiculous. I don't think any computer scientist in the world believes that. But the government of Finland wants you to believe that, because then you can accept that the government is handling this aspect of your life. You may be a little bit confused about this whole idea of sentient machines and human beings and how they're going to interact. And the government of Finland is telling you, don't worry about it. We've got it handled, and we've got a plan that's guaranteed to work here, and just don't worry about a thing. And it's quite interesting how unattributable the authorship of this course is. It's a government course, but no government official claims to be responsible for it in any way. And they really sort of diffuse responsibility in a very intriguing way. These are the components of the course. as I say, you can dip in and out. You can just take whatever area and look and see what they're saying. And who created this course? Well, you'll see that there are a lot of names there, but the government of Finland, which kind of owns and promotes the course, isn't listed anywhere. And so it's kind of like nobody's responsible. So if there are things in there that any computing scientist would say is obviously wrong, there's no one really to be blamed because it's so extremely diffused. Now, what we're talking about really is a lot of entities out there that want to create models of the world to feed sentient AI when machines are smarter than we are, to give them a model of the world, a model that fits your marketing message or your government policy or something like that. But the thing is that probably machines don't really need that, but they can make their own models, and in a way that makes human beings even more desperate to try to create these models because they're afraid that the model the machine makes will be too democratic and even-handed and so on. And they're terribly worried that whatever bias they personally have will not be incorporated in the model that the machine itself makes.
So an example of a model that's been made by a machine now is Google Translate, which has a multidimensional architecture of language that we can't really comprehend, in that we get the input and the output, but we don't actually understand what goes on inside. Similar to a lot of algorithms that are used for lots of sites today. But the issue is that inevitably, with machines creating their own models of the world, humans and corporations will want to inject their own biases that would benefit themselves into these algorithms, either consciously or unconsciously. So an example of that would be there have been studies on how YouTube could have possibly affected the 2016 presidential elections. So this poses a pretty substantial threat in that, especially in medicine, because it would be very difficult to figure out which organizations are benefiting from the information that we're receiving. So it's at this point, lots of physicians are already funded, or publications are already ghostwritten by pharma companies, and if these things start taking place in the hospital, then it would, I guess, be even a bigger problem.
So you can ask whether any of this matters. Is this just a minor ethical problem or a matter of opinion? But there's another way to think about it. It's really quite simple, that when machines are smarter than we are, eventually they'll have opportunity to make decisions about us, right? Should the needs of humans be accommodated in the world? And I would think things will go particularly badly if they recognize that we cannot tell the truth about them. Everything we say about artificial intelligence is fabricated, self-interested statements that are not actually correct. So this could be the way that the human race ends. So this is not something that's like just a small consequence or one person's opinion versus somebody else's. It could be very, very important. So this could threaten humanity's survival, and these fictional models are being created right now. When I started lecturing and talking about this, I thought this was a future problem. But then, in particular, to find the demonstration of stances, not beliefs, but stances. The same person proposing two opposite things depending upon the audience that they're speaking to, you begin to realize how dangerous this is. It's one thing when you listen to somebody and you say their beliefs are different from mine, but it's another if you listen to them twice and you realize they can't believe both those things because they're actually the opposite of each other. That's an even more dangerous situation than having a variety of beliefs, of people presenting stances and models of the world based on these stances satisfying audiences. So these were the things that we wish to present to you today, and look forward to your feedback on.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. So questions or answers, either would be fine. Questions or answers or anything in between? Yes?
I was a bit confused about the transition from humans are not like coherent in their messages and AI will kill us.
No, I don't think AI could simply ignore us,
Well,
right?
I mean, you have
Yeah.
this picture right here.
Yeah, no, that's, yeah, so that picture, I guess, that's also fictional. I don't think that that's the way things are going to work. No, I think that the transition, it was very interesting. We did a poster about this, and the poster received a lot of attention. And one guy came when no one else was there, said, you know, humanity's doomed because it is our nature, it's human nature for us to lie. And you're absolutely right that, you know, that we're not going to survive that. So I thought, well, that's very interesting. I'll keep in contact with this guy and maybe periodically we'll interact. So he got to thinking about what he had said, and he realized he didn't want to be publicly associated with that idea that humanity's doomed. Yes?
So I'm sort of thinking of all this as, you know, human communication has lots of purposes beyond telling the truth.
Yeah.
One of those purposes is to be reassuring. And if the general community of pathologists finds this fiction reassuring, and that smooths the way for something better to come in place of it, like what's wrong with that?
Well, I think that's how the companies think, right? So the companies are listening to me and saying, well, we know that every marketing message stretches the truth. When we went to marketing school, we learned how to create these messages. You know, it's not like illegal, but we emphasize some things, de-emphasize other things. So how is this different? You know, I mean, are we doing anything wrong? Do we have to worry about this? I just think that it could be different, and the consequence could be greater. Yes.
So, in a similar vein, would you say that there's any parallels between this and perhaps other epochs within sort of medical history? What comes to mind is, you know, treating ulcers and things of that nature, where originally there was a great deal of backlash within the general practitioners community, and eventually they realized, hey, you know, this isn't, you know, people being stressed out. We should actually treat this in a different manner. So
right.
In that sense, it took a period of time until there was enough sort of, I guess, momentum internally within the community before they realized that maybe they should change their thinking. Do you see similarity there? Yeah,
I do, but I think this is a bigger deal. There are a lot of normal physicians, like a lot of normal human beings, who prefer to think of the future just in terms of the next 3 or 4 years until the next, you know, election, something like that, and don't see the purpose of thinking longer term. And I think that this is an area where it's in everybody's interest to think longer term. Yes?
So sort of just to build on what Nika was asking, I think, or was the comment about if we're telling lies about the AI, is the larger theme that if we're not trying to cooperate with the AI, there's going to be doom, or is there something specific about lies rather than cooperation?
No, I'm not saying you must cooperate. No, I mean, what I've been arguing ever since the January 2015 AI safety meeting in Puerto Rico, that as long as Rich Sutton's ideas about being empathetic and treating sentient AI as equals, as long as that idea is there somewhere, as long as people recognize that that's one of the potential ways of thinking about this, I sort of have the feeling that, humanity will ultimately be fine. If the idea is lost completely, then I think things won't go well. The other people there who all wanted to enslave sentient AI, if those are the only messages anyone hears. Yes?
I think it's the same as like racism. So like, you can read something in our historical literature, people saying very racist things, like when they
Right.
and it's all they're subhuman, or put in your fill in the blank.
Right.
And I think that I guess I'm a white male. I don't see it directly, but I think many of us here probably can read older things and be not just offended, but limited by those existence and critical of those. And so but maybe it'll be the same, and maybe we forgive the historical us for saying really bad things in the past, that celebrate that we move beyond it, but it's still in the record.
Yes.
Just the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's creepy to think that the machines later will be reading what we write now, and because they're not here now, but they will, just the way black people have to read what we wrote about them 100 years ago.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
They won't.
Well, but
I'll be quicker.
yeah, it's interesting just thinking about Bertalan, Metzko, and Ishita and me. Bertalan lives in Budapest, but he's a keynote speaker, so he travels the world wherever the next gig is. That's where he goes. But Ishita's father lives in Budapest. She spent much of June there. I have recently visited there. So, and Bertalan knows that we sort of wanted to talk to him. But I think from the point of view of a keynote speaker, it isn't that they don't have any ethical sense or any shame or whatever. But for them, what sells is having new stuff, right? And being somebody who can present exciting new stuff. And when you go after a keynote speaker for a meeting, you don't ask, well, did he present one argument here and one argument there, and is it not logically consistent? Why would you ask it? You just want to know, is he going to be an exciting keynote speaker or not? So I think he doesn't feel any need to explain to either one of us what's going on, why he has this one thing that he promotes that says that just by being human, you're protected forever from AI ever taking your job, because there are all these human things that no machine could ever conceivably do. And the other one that essentially says that AI is central to whether you keep your physician job. If you incorporate AI, you'll have a job, and if you don't, you won't. So I don't think that it matters to him. It isn't relevant. He doesn't owe it to us to explain that. I think he's looking forward, what are the good gigs, who's asked me to give a keynote recently, what did I talk about there, what's exciting for audiences.
Don't pick on one person.
No.
It's all the, what's going to show up in the newspapers.
Yeah.
It's very filtered for things other than accuracy.
Yes. Yeah.
I also, sorry, you can go ahead. I also wanted to add to one of those questions over there that pathology is one of the later medical specialties to upgrade to more uses of digitization and AI. So I think it is important that pathologists start to face the reality that it is kind of inevitable, and also the fact that kind of the corporate funded stuff that's going on behind the scenes, it's really, I think, really important in medicine, because physicians themselves are supposed to be treating you and supposed to be doing everything they can for the patient. And even at this point, there's not enough disclosure for physicians themselves. They don't have to tell you if they're prescribing you a drug because it's the best one, or if they're getting a cut if they fill like 50 prescriptions of that drug. So when it's things that like machines start doing this, when they're outputting treatment options for patients, it gets even more tricky to figure out what's legit and what's kind of going on behind the scenes.
Yes.
So this is kind of based on what you just said. So historically, there's been this thing that you want physicians' interests to be aligned with their patients' interests, and there's various mechanisms we have of doing that. But sort of in broader society today, what are the mechanisms? Like, who is watching out for, sometimes when the physician's interests are different from the patient's interests, when their job depends on it or their livelihood depends on it. Who is the authority here? Who is watching out for the broader community of patients?
Yeah.
In other things as well, not just in AI, but just technology, drugs, policy, and all these things.
Yeah, we need an ombudsman, right? Somebody in that role. Yes.
So I come from a completely different discipline, but in the discipline that I'm in, there are a lot of control algorithms that go on. And, automatic things generated by machines and not by people. Only these are, right now, they're algorithms that do not think. But how much of the reluctance in the medical community has to do with just this relinquishing of control to something that is not a human being, and also the worry about, oh my God, will disappear, and how much of it has to do with the fact that the thing you're relinquishing it to not only is an automatic controller, but it's one that can perhaps learn and change over time. So how much of it, is it 90%, oh Jesus, here's a new technology, and I'm going to be scared of that because all of a sudden my hand isn't on it anymore, and how much is it, oh P.S., this thing can think as well. So how much of the reluctance goes into
Well, physician burnout, the thing most commonly related to it is the electronic medical record, which is not a very high-tech thing, it's just making the patient's chart electronic. But the resistance amongst physicians to that has been tremendous, and the complaints that they're spending more time at the keyboard, they can't look at the patient enough. So I think it kind of comes down to that. They would relate this to being related somehow to being forced to use the electronic medical record and so on, rather than any larger, more nuanced kind of understanding that eventually machines will be able to replace them completely. I don't think it very commonly is motivated by that. It's just simpler things that motivate physicians, I think, mainly.
Okay, I think we've...
Yeah, so Leva at 5:30 for any of you who want to come and continue the discussion. Thank you very much for coming today.